All right, let's play. Philosophy is the noblest game, so therefore we have a right to say, let's play. As you can see from this, I've changed the title. And in the end, I'll go back to the official title. So therefore, I'm going to start with Plato's allegory for the training of the soul, and then return to the real subject later. You notice the difference? Good. All right, let's play. First, what is an allegory? How do you construct it? How do you construct an allegory? All right. To play with allegories means first that you know how to generate them, how to develop them, so then you can turn around and understand them. That's the goal. An allegory starts with a four-term analogy. An analogy can be represented as A is to B, as C is to D. You can also use numbers. 2 is to 4, as 3 is to 6. You can also use ideas. Shepherd is to his sheep, as a ruler is to his subjects. Once you have your basic four terminology, you generate analogies by principle. All right? So first, you start with your first four terminology. Then you have to expand the number of terms in each ratio or progression. Then, once you've done that, you have to introduce a drama, a storyline that's going to dramatize a fundamental but most significant issue. These are the four parts of any allegory. Again, what do you start with? Four terminology. What do you then do? You expand it. Then what? You introduce a drama or a storyline. Fourth, that storyline must represent some fundamental issue, fundamental to the nature of man. Now, what is going to be our four terminology? Now, the Jowett translation translates the opening lines of Plato's allegory of the cave using these two terms, the unenlightened and the enlightened. And that's, I think, the proper way to translate it. So this is our four terminology. The unenlightened are to the enlightened as cave dwellers are to those living in the upper world. A is to B as C is to D. Now, in order to develop an allegory, you take the four terms and you expand them. How do you expand them, and what does that mean? It means that you have been able to understand a process, and you can understand that process in terms of stages. Then you transfer those stages and processes to the second set. So therefore you have an equivalence between the two. Not same, but similar relations. As an example, shepherd, right? Shepherd is to sheep, as ruler is to his subjects. No ruler is going to take care of his subjects in the same way a shepherd takes care of his sheep. It's in a similar way, not the same way. Therefore, there's always going to be a difference. All right, now, What are the stages, and the processes, and how do we represent them? How do we find them? Well, whatever steps it is necessary for the seeker to go through as he proceeds through the unenlightened to the enlightened, whatever are the stages, these are the stages, whatever those stages are, presupposes there's going to be some process that brings them through each of those stages. Now, that means we're able to take a look at the whole problem of enlightenment and say they are definable stages in that transition from one to the other. That means there is a definite number that can be distinguished, right? A definite number. Not an infinite number and not one, but a definite number of stages. Now, let us assume for the moment that we can talk about it and we can represent what we think are the stages necessary for anyone to go through when they seek this process of reaching for enlightenment. Once we've identified them, let's just represent them for the moment with A, B, C, etc. All right? Then when we're talking about our cave dwellers, they have to have the principal characteristics of the unenlightened. What must they have? The characteristics. Therefore, the cave dwellers, however we are going to portray them, they are going to have to be described in the most accurate terms that represents what is it about man that keeps him unenlightened. What is it about man that keeps him unenlightened? Put that into words, that's a characteristic, represent that among the cave dwellers. First step. Second step. Remember we said there was a series of stages that led someone from the unenlightened to the enlightened. Each one of them, each one of these, must be represented in our story as someone moving from the cave to the upper world. Therefore, we're going to represent them in our story so that we can see a similar set of characteristics that represent the relationships between one and the other. That's our goal. What are we doing now? Just quickly. We're going to look at the problem of enlightenment. We're going to study it. We want to see if we can define certain stages that men typically go through, mankind typically goes through in the quest for enlightenment. If we can identify the key stages that they face as they go through this process and represent them, describe them so we can represent them, then those same stages we should be able to represent symbolically through images that the cave dwellers take as they try to struggle in their effort to get out of the cave and live in the upper world. Whatever process, now we're on processes now, before we were talking about stages. Now, what is a process? That is something that you do that gets you from one to the other. So sometimes